This is my review of Thor, God of Thunder for the Nintendo Wii, which was released on May 3rd, 2011, and developed by Redfly Studios, the guys behind one of my personal favorite Wii games, Mushroom Men: The Spore Wars. This was also published and sent to me by Sega to review for all of you, so let's find out how good of a game this is. Thor is a third-person action-adventure game that is influenced by the longtime Marvel superhero franchise of Thor. And though the game is billed as having a different and unique storyline that is unique to these new video games, I personally am not a huge Marvel superhero comic book fan, so while the story was presented in a comic book style fashion in its cutscenes, and it did have quite a few of these, I was kind of disinterested in them and just wanted to get into the gameplay and the meat of the game. However, this isn't to say that the story is bad, it's just that I personally was not very interested in it. When it comes to gameplay, Thor feels like your typical action-adventure game that feels pretty familiar to games of similar gameplay style that have come out in the past couple of years. It does have an upgrade system, so as you progress through the game, you will earn experience, which is represented by the yellow bar underneath your health and your magic bar, and as this levels up, you will get points to spend on new abilities and powering up existing abilities, which actually works really well. That is definitely one of the redeeming qualities of this game, because as time goes on, you're introduced to new abilities as well as new attacks and new ways to defend, and you do feel a sense of progression as you go on throughout the game, and you feel like you're getting more and more powerful. The first hour or two of the game, I did feel a bit bored, a little underwhelmed with the combat, but as time went on and as I neared the midpoint of the game, I really felt like Thor was very powerful, and one of my personal favorite attacks is being able to use your Wii remote by pointing it at the screen and basically raining down this bolt of lightning that you can cover the screen with, and you have to point it at enemies and obstacles, and I just found that to be a lot of fun. Now, it also should be noted that combat does not support any kind of classic controller or any traditional control scheme. Everything is waggle controls, meaning that you have to move your Wii remote around and your nunchuck in order to do mostly all of your attacks, except for the one attack that's tied to your A button. I was kind of put off by this at first, however, it did work pretty well. There were only a couple of attacks that really didn't execute the way I wanted them to at times, such as having to thrust your Wii remote down and it thinks you're thrusting it upwards to kind of knock your enemies into the air. But they do add some control in that some of your more powerful attacks are tied to holding down many buttons and then pressing the waggle control. So if you want to use your thunderstorm, you have to hold down on the D-pad and then move your Wii remote to the left in order to use that, so there's not a lot of mishaps, and for the most part I was very impressed with the waggle controls, and they actually added a bit more to the game than I thought they would. Alright, so lastly for the combat, I wanted to talk about the combo system, which I felt was a bit too restrictive on the gameplay. Basically, every time you hit an enemy, it adds to the combo meter at the top left of the screen, and a lot of Thor's added abilities are unlocked once you've built up enough of a combo meter. So say after you've hit 40 enemies in a row, you will get the ability to have an added tornado attack to one of your combos. But the only problem with this is, by the time you build your combo meter up enough, all the enemies are dead. So you walk into a room, you kill some enemies, and then you have your combo meter built up high enough to get the added benefits, but everything is gone. And then you move on, and then of course the combo meter dies off. So I personally feel that, once you've spent all that experience on unlocking these added benefits, it shouldn't really have had the combo meter tied to them. It just felt like, a way for the developers were trying to make the combat a little bit more in-depth, but in the end it kind of took away from combat, in my opinion, and probably would have been better if the combo system was just left out of the game entirely. There's also some much-needed customization options in Thor, which is in the form of runes, which you can find throughout the game. They're hidden in most levels. Some of them you unlock just by progressing through the storyline. But what these do is it allows you to add added benefits to your character, so you can increase damage by decreasing your defense. You can add more time to some of your elemental attacks. All these different things that you can add onto Thor, and as time goes on, you unlock more and more open slots that you can equip. These up to 4 can be equipped at one time, though you do have to finish the game one time through in order to have all 4 slots open to you. So as you progress through the game, you get to different themed worlds, such as an ice world, the fire world, the forest world, and the sci-fi kind of laboratory world. The only problem is most levels are very linear. They do award you for exploring little nooks and crannies, though, by allowing you to unlock hidden artwork and such, and get new runes by exploring in places that you normally wouldn't explore. However, the levels at times felt very bland. It was basically just go from one room to the next, destroy more enemies. And gameplay was, it tried to get a little bit of variety in it by adding some very light puzzle elements, but for the most part, this is a straight up hack and slash game. So, what's the most important thing to hack and slash games? Having good combat, but also having good enemies to face. And the problem that I found with the enemies in the game is that they also lacked variety. You have your flying enemies, and you have your enemies with the shields that can only lose their shields by using a certain, thunder attack on them and whatnot. But at times I felt that they were just becoming palette swaps because all the enemies' attacks were, for the most part, all the same. You had ranged enemies as well. But there really wasn't a big difference in enemies as I went throughout the game, and it started getting quite boring. Now, the biggest, the most redeeming quality was the boss battles by far. Some of the battles did look quite impressive. Though they were easy at times, they were definitely the most impressive thing about the combat in the game. Also exclusive to the Wii version were on-rails in-flight modes, which are very similar to, say, Panzer Dragoon or Sin and Punishment, in that you're constantly moving forward and you can move your character around on screen, and you can lock on to enemies and charge up your attacks and whatnot. And while these parts were quite fun, they're very few and far between, so don't get too attached to them because there were only, I think, 3 different times in the entire game where these pop up. When it comes to the camera in the game, it is handled entirely by the game itself. It has no user input, so there are times where it does get kind of hung up in the wrong corner and you can't really see who or what you're attacking or where you're heading, though it does do a fairly good job throughout most of the game and giving you the right angle. When it comes to the graphical presentation in the game, it does feel very last generation, like this could have been a late PlayStation 2 title or on the GameCube or the Xbox. It does have a lot of slowdown at times, especially when there's a lot going on screen, and it just feels very dated. It's not a very visually stunning game, though it is very colorful. I have to admit, this is a very nice, colorful game to look at, but when it comes to a technical aspect of being wowed by everything that's going on screen, it's not very impressive. So when it comes down to it, Thor: God of Thunder is a pretty straightforward action-adventure game that has a lot of unlockables, such as costumes and artwork and videos that you can unlock throughout the game. It's a fairly short adventure. You can beat it definitely within 5 hours on the default difficulty setting. And it probably will please fans of, the Marvel Universe and Thor and the comic books and whatnot. And it'll also probably please fans of action-adventure games. It's definitely not a terrible game. The combat system is very redeeming, it's very rewarding, and it is a lot of fun at times. It's just unfortunate that other areas in the game were just not quite as refined. But if you think this game looks fun, definitely check it out, and thanks for watching.